Greetings. My name is Letitia Hensley, and I'm the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Director of Family and Community Engagement. We are excited that you are joining us today and know you will gain great insight from this session. At the conclusion of today's session, please provide feedback so that we can continue to support you with amazing sessions that will be provided throughout the year. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
Welcome to our November Family Engagement session. My name is Jennifer Gunn, and I'm one of the high school English language curriculum specialists out of the Office of Learning and Teaching. So our department is very excited to be in this space with you today, as we know how important it is for families to understand what their child is learning and how to support them in engaging with the content at home. Before we get started, we just wanted to share some supports that we have for you. The first one is the translation supporter. At the top of your screen, you should see a captions button. Click on that. It will show live captions, and then select the drop-down language for the language of your choice. We also have an opportunity to engage with you today using a Q&A function. Again, that is in the top right corner. You're going to click the Q&A and type your question into the box. Questions will be monitored by a colleague of mine, and we will have some opportunity partially in the middle of the session and at the end of the presentation to answer any lingering questions that you may have. So feel free to share your reactions during the presentation as you see appropriate. So again, thank you for coming. Today's session is entitled Literacy with the Why, Bridging School and Home. We recognize that information in this session will focus on high school resources, but please know that a lot of what we are going to share with you today can be transferred to elementary and to middle school students. So before we dig into this learning today, we wanted to look over our goals for this session. So by the end of today's Lunch and Learn, families will gain insight about literacy to establish a clear definition of how literacy shows up in home and in school. We're going to identify easy-to-use strategies that can support students in thinking critically, as well as promoting those conversations within the household. And we're going to equip the students and families with school-based and community resources that can enhance and nurture a child's academic and postgraduate goals. So take a moment to look over today's agenda. Our session has 3 parts. First, we are going to build a community language around the term literacy. Then we will move into what literacy looks like in school and how we can transfer those practices to home. And then lastly, we're going to see what additional supports are available to help you and your child have continued success throughout the school year and the next. I do want to recognize that you will have access to the slide deck. There is a bit.ly. Unfortunately, it did not transfer over to the slide deck, but we will make sure to include that at the end of today's session. So, what is literacy and how do you define it? So literacy simply is defined by using the skills of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So knowing this, what might literacy look like in your home? Where do you see literacy show up? If you would like, you can drop your ideas in the Q&A section. So I'll pause right here just to see if anybody would like to engage. So if you had an opportunity to drop some ideas of what literacy might look like in your home, here are a few examples that you were either thinking of or shared. So literacy is everywhere. There are various access points in which we engage with literacy. So for example, think about the skills you use when you're singing your favorite song. So it's not just about memorizing those words and those lyrics, but also how you interpret the words and the emotions. And that's how it comes out, and the passion when you start reciting those lyrics. Another example is posting content on social media like TikTok. Think about the persuasion skills and strategies and techniques that are being used to increase likes or to gain new followers. So we want you to understand that literacy is not just about reading books and writing essays. It's about how we engage with the language around us. So we're going to get a little bit granular here, so please bear with me. We're going to take a few moments just to look at the levels of literacy. So we wanted to show you that literacy is disciplinary literacy, intermediate literacy, and basic literacy. So in our classrooms, we tackle all three of these levels, from the basic words that we use to how we interpret information. So this is done by providing students with the strategies that support them in that critical thinking and decoding of information. So at home, you can also do the same. It can be as easy as asking your child how they came up with a conclusion, or what they think about a topic, or how about even reading a recipe from your favorite cookbook. So there's so many ways that we can engage with literacy, and it doesn't have to be these grandiose moments of sitting down, partnered up, reading a book, although that is lovely. So we want to take a moment to look at this chart. So I'll give you about 30 seconds just to familiarize yourself with the chart. So notice how literacy shows up in other content areas than English, okay? Such as researching in science, learning political terms in social studies, evaluating a piece of art, or looking at patterns and relationships in math. Also notice those commonalities of how literacy appears across all of the disciplines. In all subject areas, students are reading, engaging with vocabulary, discussing and writing, thinking about strategies that will help them engage with the material, accessing prior knowledge. All right, so here's an example of everyday literacy. A quick Google search will provide you a wide range of images you can use during family time to spark conversation with your child and build literacy skills. For example, the New York Times, these are two examples from the New York Times, they offer some intriguing pictures and graphs that are stripped of their captions for students to analyze. All you have to search, and down at the bottom, all you have to search is what's going on in this picture or what's going on in this graph. And you will receive so many different images that you can use one once a week or multiple times a week before you sit down at the dinner table or before study time. So once you guys have fun with that, trying to guess what's happening and dissecting that data, then there's normally a link that you can click on that will give you more information about what is happening. So hopefully you can see my screen and you can look at that picture at the very, very top. First question we need to ask is, what is going on here? Does something stand out to you? Does something appear to not be like the others? What do you notice? So if you're looking at that picture just like me, you'll notice that there's a gentleman that appears to be walking down a public open street in a hazmat suit, while someone and some children stare at this individual. You might also notice the way that people are dressed. This doesn't appear that it is in the 2000s. You might ask, well, why aren't they dressed the same way as the person with the hazmat suit? Aren't they worried? So all of these questions that come up allows us to start probing and making inferencing skills and begin to build inquiry. So if you could give me a reaction and raise your hand, how many people want to know what's happening? Well, I know I surely did. So when I see one that says, hey, yes, I see. So this just so happened that this was 1979, hence the reason why their outfits were looking different. And it was a gentleman who was he was promoting a rally. So it was going to be an anti-nuclear rally. And it was a protest because there was a partial nuclear meltdown on 3 Mile Island in New Jersey. So this was, I think, a Brooklyn street in 1979. And he was trying to promote this nuclear rally that was going to occur in reaction to that partial meltdown. So I got intrigued so much, I had to look. And so the New York Times links a little bit more details about what is happening, just like the graphic below. You might start asking questions. Well, wait a minute. How come young ladies are communicating with their families more than young men? What is happening that the young ladies have more of that connection, potentially, right? Making assumptions, connection with their parents, one or the other. What is the difference? So when engaging in activities like this, you are activating various skills such as inferencing, questioning, activating prior knowledge, and so much more. You might also ignite your scholar to want to research more about it because they think that the idea or what's happening is really interesting. So now that you know what literacy might look like at home and at school, We want to make sure that you are connected with schools, as well as have some quick and easy strategies in your toolbox to help engage and support your scholars at home. So the first question is, are you connected to PowerSchool? So this is a really, really, really quick plug. So if you have not had that opportunity yet, maybe you're new to CMS, we just want to make sure that you get connected with PowerSchool. So in PowerSchool, you're able to see your child's classes and their teachers. You're also able to stay up to date with their progress in each class. You're able to even see messages from teachers. PowerSchool can also be accessed on your computer or can be accessed on a smartphone using an app. So there are functions for the iPhone and for your Android device. So we just want to make sure that when you get access to today's deck, if you haven't done this already, there will be some information in the notes section of how you can sign up for PowerSchool. All right. So another way to start building early literacy at home is by sparking conversation with your child about their interests. So based on these conversations, you may decide to create some various learning experiences, such as reading more about a topic together, or visiting museums, or even thinking about a potential for a job shadow experience, which will allow your child to see the skills that they are learning in the classroom and connect it to the world and their own personal interests. So again, just think about how we are creating those conversations early with our scholars so that they can see how everything that they're learning in school applies to the real world. So now we're going to get into what can I use at home? So what are some strategies that we use in school that can be easily transferred into our homes? One strategy that we use in math is called the 3 reads. And if you notice at the bottom, they use it in 6th through 8th math and also math 1 through 3 curriculum. So the strategy requires students to read a text at 3 different moments, which helps them access the information before jumping straight into the solution. So we often find that students make mistakes on their assessments, not because they didn't know what to do, but because they overlooked or misinterpreted information caused by not fully understanding what they read. So the 3 reads process slows down students' thinking. And I do want to recognize that any of these strategies that we present, even though it says that, oh, this one might be math, you can use a multiple reading strategy also in English. So here is a quick breakdown of what each read section could look like for math students. So on the first read, students are just trying to understand the content. Here, we're not focusing on the numbers, and often the whole question is missing. On the second read, students are looking for quantities, so things that can be counted. So, and units and relationships between the numbers. And then on the third read, students plan to solve the problem. This can be a place where students ask mathematical questions related to the situation, or students brainstorm ways to approach the question. And I'm really hoping that everyone can see all parts of the screen. So here is an example of what 3 reads might look like in a math class. And I'm going to walk you through this process. So for the first read, the teacher might read the prompt or the scenario like this. Timing a blob. An engineer is designing a fountain that shoots out drops of water. The nozzle from which the water is launched is 2 meters above the ground. It shoots out a drop of water at a vertical velocity of 9 meters per second. Now, after the teacher does this reading, this would be followed by the teacher asking students to share out about the content or name some unfamiliar words. So if we were doing this together as a class, these might be some of the words that come up. Blob, nozzle, vertical velocity, which are part of the context. So with your child, you may even ask him or her to sketch, if you didn't have pictures there, to sketch a visual of what they think the situation is. So now that we have an understanding or a little understanding of the scenario, let's look at what step 2 might look like. So for the second read, the class would be asked to look at the question again. Quite often, the teacher might call on a student to read the question or the scenario out loud. But this time, remember, we're looking for quantities. So things that can be counted. So get a quantity in your head. Let's see if when I click the button and say go, if you've got that quantity or any of the quantities that are circled in your head. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Did you get any of these? So students definitely would go to that equation at the bottom because it contains numbers, or 2 meters that's circled, or 9 meters per second that's circled. But students might also recognize an engineer, because an is that indicator stating 1, or meters. There might not be a number next to it, but meters means multiple meters that are counted, or a drop, stating a singular droplet of water. So again, at home, your child may take a similar problem like this, and you can ask them to annotate for the quantities. So now we're going on to the third read. So for this last read, students might read the text to themselves. So at this point, they would be responsible for identifying any differences they see. So if you look at this one, notice the difference is the other 2 readings did not have the question for students to solve. This one does. How many seconds will the drop of water, how many seconds until the drop of water hits the ground? So at this point, typically students have a clear picture of the content and ideas. So this would be that opportunity for students to solve this problem, or at least talk through the approach they would take to solve the problem. Again, I cannot state this enough. The 3-read strategy could apply to any content area. Like, how great would it be if you're looking at a piece of literature and the student reads it one time, your child reads it one time at home, and you just ask them, what do you think is going on? Now, the second time they read it, they're looking for how they can justify what is going on. So the main purpose of the 3-read strategy is to ask your child to focus on one aspect of a situation each time they read. Also know that you don't have to follow the protocol exactly, but we did want to provide you with some easy step-by-step instructions of how you can do this at home. All right, hopefully you're ready to learn another strategy. So our next strategy we use in the classroom is called academic conversations. Now, the model that we are pulling is from our 9 through 12 ELA curriculum, but we have academic conversations in every single content area. So this routine provides students an opportunity to talk about the materials before, during, and even after the reading. Students learn to think critically about what they are reading in order to make those connections, to challenge ideas or concepts, and also to affirm their own ideas. As we build our scholars' capacity to be informed citizens, we also want to make sure that we equip them with the tools to communicate, especially communicating effectively and listening for intention. So through this strategy, students engage with discussion starters that help them frame their conversations to ensure that they are knowledgeable of various perspectives. So here's just a quick example of some of the discussion starters that are found in our ELA curriculum. So because there are different intentions for those conversations, we need to provide students with a framework to approach those moments. For example, the language that a student is going to use to summarize is going to be different from the language that they use to evaluate a text. So here's an example. So in English class, we often have moments where we look at graphs, surprisingly, right? So if we were able to use our conversation starters, what questions or statements could we ask regarding this graph? So notice the graph is on the share of teenagers taking summer classes. And we see that it's going up and down from 1985 to 2009. And then we have the percentages coming to the side. So I noticed, if I'm using my discussion starters, I noticed that there has been more than 50% increase of students that are taking summer classes since 1985. I wonder what caused such a major shift. So think how easy that is just to get students thinking about graphs or even having conversations about what's going on. Also think about how great this strategy is to help you maybe shift some conversations that you are having with your child at home. Well, tell me what you were thinking about in this situation. All right. We have 2 more strategies, and then there'll be an opportunity if we want to have a Q&A. So the next one is called diffusing. So we've spoken about 3 reads. We've spoken about how to have that academic conversation, that language. Now we want to talk about what does it look like to build vocabulary. So diffusing is the routine that teaches students how to not be afraid or to avoid unfamiliar words, but rather how to discover the meaning of new words. So students learn to look for context clues or word connections, or even determine the author's intention, if it's supposed to be the literal use of the word or the figurative use of the word. So again, here's an example. There is an anchor chart over there of our different ways that we can find those context clues. So this actual example is from a satirical essay in English 3. the little blurb that's there. So in this example, students are required to determine the meaning of the word brass. So I want you just to take a moment and read the little mini paragraph to yourself. Okay. So what did you see that might help you diffuse that word rather than just avoiding it and skipping over it? So students at first look might think of that literal meaning. Well, I know brass, brass is a metal, right? Then they're going to start to look at those context clues. Well, it says brass, brass lungs. You need it to raise a child. Well, I know what my mama did. My mama yelled at me. She needed to, when she wanted to get my attention, or being heard at a department meeting. Okay, well, I at a department meeting to get heard, you need to speak up. So then they start building those connections either about what's happening in their life or what they see in the text. And then what they will find is now that they've had that chance to practice, they come up with this language that brass isn't a metal. It's not used in its literal sense. It's used in a figurative sense. Or I can actually probably go into the dictionary and find this, but brass is also meaning it's loud and powerful and projecting. Okay, so again, now that you have had this chance to hear and practice some of the strategies and see how they're used in class, you can now see how you can, as parents and families, support your child in doing some of this work at home. So now I did say, before we have a Q&A, we've got one more strategy. So let's see, we've done reading. We've done analyzing or having those academic conversations. We've touched on vocabulary. So now what about optic? What happens if I have that graph in front of me and I don't know how to ask the questions? So optic is our final strategy, and this allows scholars an opportunity to break down a visual to better understand what is being said or what the author is trying to convey. So in art and in social studies classes, scholars use a very similar protocol. Again, this one has come from the ELA content, but this strategy is very similar. And this is a valuable strategy when looking specifically at political cartoons or advertisements, since they often use authors to persuade the audience with various tactics to convey that message. So again, we always like to practice or at least give you an example of what it might look like. So here's an example of a political cartoon that could have been used in a social studies class when they are studying the amendments. So first, if I'm using the optic strategies, students would start by generating questions about the cartoon because they're trying to get that overview. Then they're going to look carefully at the parts of the image to form some additional questions. So I might look, wait a minute, that looks like mom and a dad over to the side. There's a kid over there. Wait a minute. I remember when I was a kid, when they put me in the corner like that, it meant time out. So now I'm starting to make connections. Then it's followed by students looking at the language that's written. Sometimes there's a title, sometimes there's other words. So in this particular case, let's look at some of that language that's out there. It's amendment or free speech or constitution. Okay, now I'm making the connection. Mom and dad, child in the corner punishment, First Amendment, free speech. Okay, connecting here. Then we look at the images and the words all together to find that relationship, followed by leading students to make a conclusion. So for example, do all individuals, after looking at this, because this seems to have gotten on punishment because he used his right to free speech. Is the author stating all individuals have the right to free speech? Is the author suggesting that the amendment, the First Amendment, has a level of interpretation? So again, we got all of that out of this one little political cartoon. And if you get the newspaper at home, there's political cartoons all over the place. Now, I noticed that we didn't have the bit.ly. And so again, I had a 2-minute timer. We're going to actually pass that two-minute timer. But when you get your slide deck, you will have the chance to look at some of our resources. So we gave you some of the strategies, right, that we use in a classroom, but you also might want to see some of the resources or the curriculum materials that are used to engage with those resources. And I should be able to click versus using our 2 minutes. So if I went and clicked on the English, right? Hopefully my screen has flipped over where you would see these are your English resources. And you'll have actually, this is the curriculum. So you can go into the curriculum book with your child and look at the lesson that they are doing. We have some text complexity rationale. There's even like, oh, what unit are you in, child, son, or daughter? Oh, you're in unit 2. You should be working towards, if you're in English 1, you should be working towards, let me see, we're in unit 3 now, if they're in a semester-long class, your argumentative essay or your career presentation. How can I help you? Especially as a parent engaging in those conversations at home. How can I help you with your career presentation? You want to know what I do as a parent? So just wanted to share those resources. Again, you should be able to click right there on the deck. Math here, you notice that we have some family letters. There are some curriculum videos there for you. Social studies as well. So I know the timer's going to go off. We're just going to go and push past that. It's going to be okay. But when you do get an opportunity, we do want to make sure that you engage at least with the English, math, and social studies materials to see exactly what your child is learning, or at least have an idea of the overall content that they will be engaging with this year. So don't worry about the timer. We're going to pause just for a minute because that was a lot. And there may be some questions that are out there. So just thinking about the strategies and the resources that we've given you, how might you see these resources support you and your child? You can respond to that question. Or if you had any other lingering questions about any of the strategies or the resources, I am open to hear from you.
Great information today. We do have a few questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
One shares, when my child misses school days, where can I find all the study materials to help make up for that loss?
Great question. So once again, I think that's where you need to make sure that you have PowerSchool access. Because a lot of times teachers put information directly in PowerSchool. They might not have graded the assignment yet, but you would know exactly like, hey, were you here for this assignment? So that's number one. The other one is ensuring that you have access to their Canvas accounts. So all teachers should have a Canvas account, and you as a parent can register to be an observer on that Canvas account. So a lot of times teachers post daily, this is today's lesson, this is this is that. So you would be able to see in real time, Monday you missed school, this is what you did on Monday.
Thank you. Another question, why do schools maybe not provide a spelling word list or homework sheets? Our curriculum teaches literacy principles, but my daughter is struggling to apply the letter blend or magic E when reproducing that principle.
Great question. So we've learned that doing vocabulary specifically in isolation doesn't really support the development of the literacy or that reading skill, because just like we learned with that example with the word brass, if I just know the literal sense of the word brass, I'm not going to make that connection that it's talking about a loud voice. We do have, at least in English, I can speak to that. We have with our curriculum it's called Zinc, and Zinc has vocabulary practice features where they read and Zinc Ignite, so they can read articles and they can engage with the vocabulary in those articles. And so they can see it in real time and how the author is applying it. So I would recommend, again, if you're sitting down and reading with your child or asking them to read something, this is an opportunity to sit and talk about the language that's used in context. I will also name that we do suggest, as students read the first time, you don't always have to read for meaning. You can just identify unfamiliar words so that you can go back and maybe even look them up in the dictionary. Because again, we always want to make sure that we apply the vocabulary to something that we are reading or connecting to.
If students are in a grade level where they might not be fluent readers yet, why are word problems used in the curriculum?
Good question. So again, we want to make sure that we are providing students access to grade level content material. So we often provide scaffolds within the curriculum that will support our struggling readers. But again, we also have various supports within the school system that will allow you to develop those reading skills. Again, like in English, we have Zinc and we have Quill that work on some of those fluency. I know that we are also MTSS. They did a lunch and learn as well. And there is iReady that they're using also to build that fluency skill with students. It even goes down to phonemic awareness. Now, I'm going to pause the questions because we have a few more slides, and this might also help some parents as they think about, like, what else can I do to support your child? And then I will answer any additional questions at the end. So it takes a village to shape the future. So many of us are familiar with the word or the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. But we also need to consider how the village is shaping our future. And so often we're talking about a village as our friends and family and school. But what about the neighborhood outlets and some online resources? Did you know? So the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library is one of those resources. It offers free supports, free, did you hear it? Free supports to all CMS students, such as online tutoring, essay and resume writing, and even test preparation. But I'm going to name free. So before we look a little bit more, we're going to take a look at this video that was produced by the library.
Hi, my name is Amrita Patel and I work for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. Welcome to Reading in Color Shorts Resources Edition. Today I'm going to share a little bit about why tutor.com is my favorite resource. First of all, I love that I can access up to 10 free tutoring sessions per week. Monday through Sunday, anytime after 4 p.m., I can connect with a live tutor. I also like that there's a lot of practice quizzes. Maybe you're practicing for the ASVAB or an AP test, or you just need a little bit of practice help with your algebra, chemistry, whatever it is. There's a practice quiz in here for everyone. There's also a lot of SAT and ACT preparation materials, as well as videos and grad school tests, AP exams, you name it. And then lastly, my favorite thing about this resource is that I can submit a paper to be reviewed, up to 1,200 words, and it can be either a resume or an essay, and within 24 hours, an expert emails it back to you with suggestions on how to improve your writing. Visit www.cmlibrary.org to access tutor.com today.
All right. So Those library services are often offered 7 days a week, except for only 4 major holidays. So we just want to name that 7 days a week, the entire year, not even just during school. And there's only like 4 holidays that they aren't offered. So if you don't have time, or like me, you don't even feel comfortable supporting your child in specific areas. I'm not a math person, you guys. I know that one of my colleagues says we're all math people, but I'm not. I would send my child to get maybe that math support. So we do want to recognize that she stated one way to get on. Within CMS, we want to make sure that your child accesses tutor.com using our One Access link on their school computer. And that's where they can sign up for those live online tutoring sessions and the paper editing. Again, those are going to be the links. So once you go back to this video, you'll be able to see all those supports. And again, if your child has that school computer, goes on, they're just going to be able to access that through One Access. Okay, so we are wrapping up, everyone. So beyond tutoring, we also highly encourage you to continue having conversations with your child about their future careers. So here are like 3 links that you can explore after this session that can help you navigate some of those career conversations with your child, or also some scholarship opportunities. So the sponsors are there. So College Board has sponsored that, or ourchild.org, and it tells you just a brief description of what you would find in that particular resource. But they are great, great, great resources, especially that one, Big Future, See Your Options. Look at it, says students can take a career or college quiz that will help them plan for their future. So again, we want to remember, we're not in school to just take tests, right? We're not here just because we need to take the end of the grade test. We're in school to learn those lifelong skills and strategies of literacy so that we can be successful outside of the 4 walls of the school building or even the house. We have, if you have feedback, we did want to put this bit.ly out there. They really do want to hear about the session and any sessions that you've come to, so that we can make sure that we provide a great family engagement experience for you. I'm going to leave it there, just so that people have access to the bit.ly link. I do want to make sure that people have access to the bit.ly link for this particular session as well, but I will make sure that it's on the slide that we upload. Do we have any questions? I can answer any more.
We do have a few more in the chat today. Let's see. I have a student that is going to middle school next year and is currently at a 7th grade reading level. How would you recommend I use these supports to help transition him into the middle school setting?
Excellent. So definitely I would start with the 3 reads. So just making sure that your child is confident and comfortable with reading. I would also, again, maybe even starting with asking some questions about what they are reading. And then secondly, talking about the vocabulary, because I see a lot of times it's not really about the context, because if it was read aloud to your child, they may feel more confident in discussing some of what's happening in the text, but they're getting hung up on the vocabulary. So really teaching that strategy of the diffusing so that they can engage with the vocabulary and look at those context clues to help them understand the text better.
What grade do students begin to access a Canvas account?
It's a good question. I am not sure. I would assume that it would be in the elementary school, but we would have to ask someone for that. I apologize that I cannot answer that one with confidence.
And we can make sure that's followed up in future communication for our families. How do we access Zinc?
Zinc, very good. Good question. So as long as your child is in 9th through 12th grade English, it is part of our current curriculum, which is Springboard. So when they go into their Springboard account on their Launchpad on their computer, they will have access to the Zinc. Quite often, the teachers may even assign Zinc reading to their classes, but the child can go on and research those as well. I would reach out to your child's teacher just to see if he or she is assigning Zinc first, and reach out to your child's English teacher if they're assigning Zinc, and if not, maybe you could request to have Zinc be assigned to your child. They can assign it to a whole class, or they can assign it to individual students. They have those Zinc Ignites, which it gives them a series of readings and activities and vocabulary practice and all of that. And it actually gives them a diagnostic in the beginning. So it will calibrate what they're reading based on their Lexile. And the goal is to push them to a higher Lexile level after a certain amount of time. I think it's like 6 or 12 weeks. But ask your child's English teacher.
Can you